of Khaki Heritage Foundations. The place where you're sitting right now is Khaki Labs, the home of Khaki Heritage Foundation. And this is the place where we used to spread the heritage out. And as a part of a series of talks which we are organizing, we are doing one today with Ms. Meher Marfatia. And I would like to introduce our host first, Vinayak Talwar. He is a HR professional and a heritage evangelist, a Delhi boy who adopted Mumbai, and the city has adopted him as his own. He has researched and curated many walks for Khaki Tours. He will be hosting this engaging conversation with our special guest. Give him a hand, please.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Meher Marfatia is, of course, a very well-known journalist. She has been a journalist for 40 years. She is a former assistant editor of the Illustrated BG of India and also a former text editor of Mark Publications, the country's premier art history publishing house, as well as the founding text editor of leading journals of international repute such as the Art India magazine and Vogue. She has represented India at prestigious writers' residencies in the International Institute for Journalism, Berlin, and Seeds of Peace Camp in Mumbai. Meher is a freelance author and an independent publisher. Her imprint is called 4950, and there's a very interesting story behind this. Please ask her after the talk is over. And she has also authored numerous books and co-published a few books. And her most recent book, which is a fantastic book, is called Once Upon a Time, which is
City.
Once Upon a City, and it's out there. If you need to purchase it, if you want to purchase it after the talk, you can do it. She also runs a website, mehermarfatia.com. It's an encyclopedia of information. It's a paid subscription though. Please do check it out whenever you get the time. And so, over to you, Vinayak and Meher, to regale us with these amazing stories of the past, but most importantly, of the people who have shaped the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indranil. I hope I'm audible to everyone. If in case I am not, you can have the privilege of asking us to be louder as well. So, Meher, it's really exciting to be a part of this conversation with you.
Thank you, Khaki. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Vinayak.
And thank you all for being a part of this as well. I myself have been in this city now for 10 years and very close to what Meher has been doing for over decades is something about realizing that this city is much more than just the landmarks we hear of or probably some of the few places that we get to visit on and off. It's really about visiting the neighborhoods, the lanes, and most importantly, beyond just the buildings as well. And that's why we've themed this conversation as Mumbai or Bombay beyond buildings as well, and really talking about the people, their stories, and getting to know a little bit about Meher as well. And that's the flow of the discussion is going to be. It's going to be fairly light and sprinkled with a lot of stories that we have of the people who have been a part of Meher's life and been a part of this city's larger life as well. So let's get things started by one of the stories that Meher wanted to share with us as well. So Meher, I'm going to show this image to the audience.
Yes.
And for those of you who can't read the script,
This is Dilip
Meher.
Salunke. He's a florist who sits on Victoria Road, Baikala, East Baikala, and that's his wife in the background. And I had visited him 8 years ago when I did a story on Victoria Road, which is now called Sant Savda Marg. It's the road that most of us know as starting with Gloria Church, then going on to Masina Hospital, Rustam Bagh. So it is very monumental on that side of it, the right side. And on the left is, you have little shops, you have Gloria Restaurant, which is over 100 years old. And right next to Gloria Restaurant, he sits in a little stall. He's struggling with this stall now. 8 years ago, it was a little more prosperous. But the amazing thing about him, and I think that embodies the cosmopolitanism of Bombay in a way that we don't quite get in the circles that we move around in. And he was exceptional. Now, he's sitting at the shop that his grandfather started over 100 years ago. No, a little under 100 years ago. And because it's near Parsi bastions like the two colonies of Rustam Bagh and Jar Bagh, he is so conversant with Gujarati, that's okay. You would think that's a business kind of deal, that it helps him interact with customers. But the most amazing thing is he has immersed himself in imparting that personal touch. I was witness to this. He just picks up the phone, someone says hello, and from that one word hello, 2 syllables, he knows who the client is, and he'd say, "Ha, Dolly Bhai, I'm going to send you your gulcharis and your gulab right away." And someone else, and he had a stream of customers calling him. This is in the days when he was doing better. As I said, he's struggling now. And I was so struck by that, just the hello. Then, of course, he went on to, that's in my last column on my blog, he went on to tell me the 30 days of the Zoroastrian calendar month, and which are the auspicious days, and on these days I do better, and we call them Roj, right? Each day is called such and such Roj. And I was so struck by and charmed by that. So this is someone who's doing it out of sheer, he wants to immerse himself in his neighborhood. He thinks it's vital. He thinks that customers are important beyond the transaction. And that's why I thought he's one of the people that we should start with. And in response to this story, I would like to read out a reader's description. This is someone from Rustambagh, Jangir Mystery. He says, "Hello Meher, I loved the Foolwala episode. Dilip and his family, his father, his brothers are friends. My dad, for some reason, called him John. Now, that's something a Parsi would do, just anglicize everything. But this is important. What he says is, simple, lovely, hardworking people like the pav-walas, the doodh-walas, the newspaper-walas, and so many others who keep this mighty metropolis going. Thank you for profiling them." So this is, I think, what we would like to elaborate on, right? Today's talk is about the people beyond the buildings, people who live around monuments and have a fine sense of where they come from, what the monument means. We just whiz past them. So Dilip Salunke is quite one of my heroes.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Meher. And we're going to have a lot of stories coming in through this conversation as well. Just a disclaimer: please don't ask specific dates or quotations, because we're not historians here. I definitely am not. So the idea is more about the stories that we hear from these individuals.
Yeah, thanks for that. Because I feel that what excites me is if something is found in a library, is found in an archive, what is the aha excitement that I am bringing to a reader?
Yeah.
So if it doesn't excite me with originality, and that's what I need to do, then why would readers be? If they can find it elsewhere, what's the joy of writing that way? And I think one of my earliest lessons in why you should go beyond monuments is, and this is a very personal story. So the Gateway of India, which all of us know, I've got a lovely image by Danish Mystery here. It's got 3 iconic buildings together in the frame. So it has my birth date inscribed on it, etched in stone there. And because of that, my parents this was in 1911 on December 2nd, King George V and Queen Mary sailed in. Okay. So I was very excited. As a child, you think, oh wow, the British king and queen came here on my birthday, and my mother very soberingly just sliced that excitement and said, yeah, but that's not the best thing that happened So as a child, I couldn't understand, but later, and then she told me, she said, all dates carved in stone can be exciting. It's not just about being self-indulgent about your birth date. And from there came, so every December 2nd, I would be taken to a different kind of monument.
Okay.
And so the monument part of the interest came right from childhood.
So it would be very interesting to know, Meher. One was, of course, the monument, the building interest as well.
Yeah.
How did you transition from just buildings to then stories of those living in these buildings, neighborhoods?
Yeah. So actually, some of you may have read this before. I have my children who are here with me to thank. Lots of why is this, why is this, that, as I took them around the city in the 1990s when I had my children. And I remember my son was transitioning from kindergarten to big school, to regular school. And what a lot of teachers ask kids on that last year of school, what would you like to be? So all the girls were into air hostess, ballerina, this, that. The boys were astronauts, engine drivers, whatever. I'm talking about 30 years ago. And my son said something which left me a little gobsmacked and slightly embarrassed, but now I think it was a damn good answer. He said, I want to be the man who gives permission for people to go right to the top of Rajabai Clock Tower, which is hardly ambitious, but he thought of that. And something told me he's talking about a man, he's placing the man there, and I just thought, he's breathed life into a monument. So I was a little interested, and I went around asking a lot of young people, their friends, about where they'd like to go, what to do. Sharda Dwivedi, the most wonderful Sharda Dwivedi, our urban historian, said to me, why don't you compile all this in a book? Your children have given you enough fodder to think about. And that's when I wrote a book for Midday called Little Mumbai. Tariq Ansari encouraged that tremendously. And then people said, why only children? This is information that even we are not often privy to. So that's how it became writing for adults as well. And then I thought it has to be done with some regularity. And therefore, columns, not necessarily midday. At the first, it was with Mapping Mumbai was Mumbai Mirror. Then there was Bombay Times in the days when it had proper stories. So so under different slugs, there was Urban Legend, Mapping Mumbai, and then it came to be Once Upon a City with Midday.
Okay, okay, lovely. I hope you're all following Meher quite religiously in terms of the stories that come out week on week, and if not for Midday now, of course, on her blog as well. But I think you all will be very curious to know, how does one go about doing this, right? How do you really try and extract these stories from individuals? Because many times I go up to a person and they just shoo me away thinking I'm an imposter who's up to no good, or I'm some real estate agent trying to take over their property.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe I carry that look.
No, I've honestly not had a problem.
Yeah.
I think that's the most beautiful part of a city like Bombay. Very welcoming. One or two doors have slammed in my face, and that was not because of, those are senior citizens who live alone, and they have every right to be suspicious. Otherwise, I found it a very warm and welcoming city. People literally walk with me to wherever I'm asking them. They're not just pointing directions. And also, when you tell someone, everyone wants to share their story, right? And when you tell someone, I'm interested in hearing about your life story, your ancestors, what brought them to this particular part of the city, that depending on the neighborhood I'm mapping, they are so excited, sometimes overexcited. So sometimes you have to corroborate a lot of details which sound very exciting, but not always authentic.
Of course.
But if you say, let's do your story together, you and me, I find that helps a lot. I also worked in a very old-fashioned way. I do not record.
Okay.
So as an oral historian, I'm one of the few who don't. I do good old pen and paper.
Okay.
It does not intimidate people. And also, eye contact is, of course, that you can do even with a recording. But as soon as they see a phone, they're a little cagey. Especially if it's a painful history. We'll come to painful histories a little further into the conversation, I think. And initially, I just start talking to them. I don't even write. I memorize the first 5 or 10 minutes of any encounter. I don't call it an interview. It's an encounter. It's a meeting. It's an interaction. If you look at it that way, then the warmth comes in. They open up. There's honesty. There's not any kind of suspicion. And even if they're hesitant initially, you must immediately show, as soon as I show that, no, it's okay, please, don't dwell on this. And I carry on with something a little more innocuous, little easier for them to talk about. Then they come back to it. So
Okay.
as soon as you show that you are curious but not prying, opens doors.
And I think there was one
Can you imagine doing that in Delhi? Or Bangalore, or anywhere I've talked to people, oral historians. You don't just go up and cold call and knock on doors.
Yeah, that's true. I think here the lives are not just behind closed doors. Sometimes they're found outside in the verandas, in the streets,
Yes,
in the lanes.
yeah.
And it's very easy then to pick up
Absolutely.
threads from there and then, of course, carry on there.
Absolutely. And people are curious, why is she walking up and down my lane all the time? आपको कौन चाहिए? किसके घर ले जाऊँ? आपको कौन सी दुकान ढूंढ रहे हैं? So, that kind of thing. Ration shops sometimes, grocery stores, those are the places where, because they are the people behind the counter have their regulars, right? So if you want to find out who should I speak to in such and such, but you have to find ways in which to get the information. It's quite enjoyable most of the
True.
time. Sometimes the trail runs cold,
Yeah,
but you carry on.
true. Sorry, there was a hand.
Another question. So when you spoke about obviously them wanting to love the stories and wanting to be heard, is it just because it's something out of the ordinary for them to have someone come and take interest in the story, or they're more keen about getting the story out there, maybe to the masses?
Mostly the first. Mostly the first. And then it could go either way. And also sometimes I'm just intrigued by the name of a lane. I don't know anyone on them, like Windy Hall Lane, which I profiled recently in Kolaba. It's the last civilian lane before Navy Nagar starts. And I thought, why is it called Windy Hall? And I didn't know a soul. So I went to the corner shop and he said, हाँ कहा करते थे तूफानी गली.
So funny.
So I like Tufani Gali. So that that intrigued me all the more. Then I remembered someone who stayed there, and I asked her, and she said, "Yeah, the postmaster would call it Tufani Gali until some of the residents protested and said you can't just go around making literal translations of a lane, and
Yeah.
we need a mail to reach us." So he said, "Translation to bahut badhiya hai." So something like that. So these are just starting points, and then it's a snowball effect. It carries on.
Yes.
Meher, I want to know if you face any rejection.
It'll come later. Let me talk about that. I did just say, very rarely. And sometimes people want to check how bona fide you are. And Bombay, especially, as you mentioned, real estate. A lot of people, most of Bombay live as tenants, right? So a lot of people are a little fearful of if I talk about when my grandfather came here, what will the landlords say? So you've got to be, I don't use words like landlord, owner, tenant. It has caused problems for people in the past. So you learn to be sensitive to these things. But you're asking for oral history, their story, what they came to the city with, what were their hopes, their aspirations, were they realized? Who doesn't want to talk about that? So it's living history. It's not cold monuments and stone.
In case any of you want to come sit up front, please do. If you're
So
sitting
sometimes, I want to talk about the
Yeah.
Slater Road boat.
Yeah,
run.
yeah.
Can
sure.
we have it?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So when I was writing about Slater Road, when I was mapping Slater Road, everyone kept talking about how the lane would get flooded. This is the lane that abuts Grant Road Station. And everyone talked about, there was a very kind gentleman, we used to call him the boatman of Slater Road. He worked for a boat company, so he actually kept one boat, he reserved it for residents in the rain to be taken from whatever they're building down the lane up to Grant Road Station so that the children could catch their train to school on time, people could reach office on time. And for 5 years, I only called him the boatman of Slater Road in the article and nobody knew. Then I got an email from the gentleman there in the middle. It's almost like he's putting up his hand and saying, I'm the boatman. So he wrote to me and said, ma'am, I'm your boatman of Slater Road. A gentleman called Fram Dhondi, as I realized later.
From Mumbai,
Yes.
he got a car, a Fiat, which was run from 10 lakh kilometers.
Yes, he's a vintage car.
10 lakh kilometers.
Yeah.
And he had to reset the clock of the car.
That's right. That's right. So he was the boatman of Slater Road, as he revealed himself to me. So sometimes it's worth, I was debating without a name, should I put in this story? But the act was an act of kindness. It needed to be recorded with or without the name. And anonymity actually is extra kind. Then when I found out from him, it was real joy to have him. So that's the only photograph that I do have of him after he revealed himself. And then I'd also like to maybe talk about how you can see a monument and it could trigger in each of us an interest to know the story behind it, sometimes sad, sometimes of jubilation. Can we have yeah, this is, okay, first the sad story. So this is the Shivaji Park statue in the making. It was huge. It was made in 30 parts, assembled in the foundry at the back of the Bandra home of N.G. Pansari. That's his son, Kiran. N.G. Pansari was a very, very well-known Art Deco architect. So this statue was commissioned in 1966, and there was an advisory committee which would review how it was coming along. And it's a grim story. So Pansari was a little dejected that initially the brief was make it 22 feet high, 26 feet long. And then when they placed it in Shivaji Park, they said, no, in the expanse of Shivaji Park, this would be dwarfed. So arbitrarily, the height was raised. He had a very tight production time for that. He went out of pocket because there were no extra funds extended to him to make this statue more massive. He was anyway a chain smoker, and this claimed his life. His son has revealed to sources that working on this. Can we also have the
Yeah.
next one? That's, I don't think we have a clicker. Right in the corner, can you see
yeah,
Pansare standing right bottom corner?
The laser doesn't point in the TV, only the walls. But yeah, he's right
Yeah,
there.
he's on the
right side.
scaffolding
Yeah.
of the Shivaji statue that he's making. And that was another thing that he disagreed. He disagreed with the brief.
Yeah, this
The
one
brief,
right here.
the brief given was also something he didn't quite agree to. Shivaji is always shown with an unsheathed sword in his hand. And they said, no, let his hand be extended in a kind of a benevolent gesture as though he's inviting followers and not a militant stand. And he thought, but that's not, he thought that was tinkering a bit with history, but he did that. So that again was something that he was not very happy with. But very grateful to Art Deco Mumbai and the Pansare Family Trust for giving us this kind of very interesting photograph.
Yeah.
And that's Dadabhai Nauroji's statue outside Orient Building at Fountain. So for very long, I didn't really look at the pedestal. Vinayak, can we have the
Yeah.
pedestal? So, yeah, on the pedestal, we can see right on top it says mothers really build nations. Mothers really build nations.
one right
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a beautiful sculpture done by B.V. Talim in 1925. Yeah. So, correct. The Dadabhai Nauroji statue is Bombay's first bronze public statue. Shivaji Park much later. That was 1966 to be precise. This was 1925. And you see Dadabhai Nauroji leading a group of women and children, and he's fought very hard for women's education in India. And from the drape of the saris and the little girls' costumes, you can tell that it's a mix of communities. There's Maharashtrians, there's Gujaratis, there's Parsi women. So that's very interesting. A cosmopolitan group of young women and children being led by him to Saraswati Mandir. That's just a scene that Talim captured to show that he was so for women's education and not just the statesman and freedom fighter that we know. And then, okay, Yuti Bhansali is here with us. That's Yuti with me and my husband Noshir. But before that, this is Kennedy Bridge, two scenes from Kennedy Bridge. Yuti does these amazing Grant Road by Night walks, and she does a great one in Tardev as well. We went for one of the Grant Road by Night walks, and that's the entrance to Congress House, the Sangeet Kalakar Bandal Gate. And somewhere between Congress House and this urinal below Kennedy Bridge, you can see the Kennedy Bridge structure. I had met, and this is an unscheduled interview. A lot of people I just meet, right? I didn't set out to meet her, but it was early evening, a little early for a sex worker to be out on the street, but there she was. And she was haggling with a flower seller. And she just turned to me and gave me a kind of a very woman-to-woman look and said to me, just see, every day I buy the same Mogra Veni from him, and he still thinks he can overcharge me. She was being thrifty and telling him, don't do this with me, don't mess with me. I come here every day for the same thing. And then she looked at me, and I had my pen and pad out, not for her story, but generally, as I see things, I'm just making jottings and then elaborating on them. And she said, all you journalists are the same, put away that pen and paper. So I put it away. I mean, just out of respect, I wasn't looking for her story. And she said, the only journalists who have been good, they came many years before you in the 1980s.
Oh.
And they were British. And they treated me with so much respect. They were making a film. And after that, nobody has come anywhere. They just want to dig into my personal life and why I joined this profession and don't you want to be cleaned up? And, so she was really quite upset about the kind of questions that came her way. So I was not even looking to sort of map her story. But then it stuck with me. And I said, 1980s? She said, yes. a film was made on you. She said, yes, and they treated us all, me and my girls, with so much respect. So I went home and I started researching. And for 2 days, I couldn't find something. Then I found she meant Merchant Ivory Productions.
Ah, okay.
They were doing a documentary called
Yeah.
The Courtesans
Yeah,
of Bombay.
yeah.
And how amazing that she remembered them and acknowledged them only for the respect they gave her.
Oh.
And that was in the 80s, but she remembers.
Oh.
So I thought that was, of course, she's not here, but I just thought I could tell you where I found her, between the Congress House entrance and where Yuti and we're standing. Yuti, would you like to add about the Sadat Hassan Manto reference, since that came from you?
So there is a story, a short story called Home the English, Manto is written. Not one of his most popular ones. But in there he talks, so he used to frequent this area a lot. Not for the sex work or he used to go for the gambling and the alcohol. These two big loves. So he used to obviously, he was also a Grand Road person. He used to frequent Grand Road, shady areas a lot. And there is this story that he talks about when there was a urinal. It's not the same one, obviously, this is new. But he talks about during partition when there was a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment sort of popping up in Bombay. And he talks about how he entered the row and there was all these like anti-Muslim slogans written on a graffiti. And he talks about how that made the stench more, like even more unbearable. And he just quipped a little, I mean, I'm translating very badly, but he says, Jinnah or Congress House are just a few meters away, but this urinal is just as free to spread its floating stench. So, obviously, also being the anti establishment area that was. So, I always like to stop my walk.
That's the end of that work.
At the urinal, and people are always surprised, but then there's the story and so.
Yeah, they don't all have to be pretty stories. Yeah, in fact, they're not. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Yuti, as well. Meher, this is a question that has been bugging me for quite some time, and I would like to get to the bottom of it. Which is the most favorite part of the city for you?
So most favorite is very tough. All of the city is interesting, but of course, since it's a question, it deserves that kind of answer to it. I love the inner city areas, mid city. South Bombay is monumentally beautiful, but it has been chronicled, it has been documented at length, and oral history is not so much. So I find, because of certain areas which were the mill hubs, your textile mill hubs, your movie studios. So you're talking about everything from Mahim and Dadar and Agripada and Nagpada. Baikala is fantastic. I love Baikala. I've already done 5 columns on it, and that's not enough. And these are the real, I feel, these are the people who fuel Bombay's engine, right? I mean, these are the city is built as a working class city, which is the most beautiful thing about it to celebrate, I think. And these are the areas that give you those very heavy histories. They are heavy histories because they have lived through so much. For us, it's a date, okay, 1980s, the textile strike, but what it actually did to every family, the tremendous loss of lives, of livelihoods, of just not knowing what to do next. And then, where malls came up in exactly where they went through so much suffering. So these are stories that are very heavy to share, but they do, and they do that with remarkable courage and candor, and I really appreciate that, because it's a privilege, to have people open their hearts to you, and to then lots of judgment calls you have to make. What part of it can be included? They say likho likho because they're just so full of it. But you have to protect them in the way you feel is best. So there's a lot of judgment calls I take per paragraph, per person that we meet. But yes, these are the areas I like the most. And of course, I'm partial to Bandra because I grew up there. And lots of people have chronicled South Bombay. So while I am very happy to go for walks with people like you all Khaki and other people all over, these are my favorites. The places that embody working class Bombay.
So which story then would you like to pick up first from this area then? Shall we start with Matunga?
Yeah, we can start, but actually all the circles, so Khodadat Circle, Science Circle, King's Circle, I find all of them fantastic. So that covers Matunga and the other. And I think the next slide will illustrate something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So here is Mohandas Kamath. He has a laundry called Orient Laundry at, I think it's Orient, one moment I've made, yeah, Orient Cleaners in Bora Bhavan, old building. And I was really going around in circles, on the circle, trying to get lots of information and not very forthcoming. I remember it was a very hot month. I was bothered. It was just after COVID, so everyone was still masked and very difficult to interact with people and even win their trust without taking off the mask. So it was a little difficult working. And there he's posing with my book. He had a copy of my book. He recognized me and he just made me sit at his counter and mapped King's Circle for me. So sometimes these are, you serendipity walks with you sometimes if you're fortunate. And he was my khabri, all of them, your panwalas, your foolwalas, the grocery guys, newspaper walas. And there were so many laundries around King's Circle. It was just amazing that he happened to see me look a little harried and inquiring. And so he called me to his counter and he gave me the most amazing stories. And he told me about his father. I've got it down here. His father had a professor friend called Ramchandar Nanda, who brought to King's Circle the classes, the coaching classes that all of us of a certain vintage will remember Agrawal classes. So Agrawal classes was Khodadat Circle in Harganga Mahal. So Ramchandar Nanda was a friend of Agrawal, whose story, again, Mohandas Kamath told me. So anyway, so Ramchandar Nanda started Ramchandar's Institute from a Vadala garage before progressing to King's Circle. That's how his father knows him. And catering to commerce, science, and economics students. And then he told me that, see, he was a friend of Agrawal, and he wanted to know about G.D. Agrawal, and I had that story. So it was a very nice exchange of stories. It's a great feeling when someone tells you something and you have something to share. So I told him the story I had found out at Khodadat Circle, Agrawal classes. G.D. Agrawal came in the mid-50s to Bombay from Ajmer with 29 rupees from selling his bicycle in Ajmer. Great with math and science, started teaching math and science free to Mil Mazdoor children in Mazgaon. Then he decided, no, now he needed to turn professional. He has to earn a living in the city that he's run away to with 29 rupees in his pocket. So turning professional in a cramped Matunga room, which his family was living in this cramped Matunga room. And they went out and were on the streets or did something else while coaching classes were being run by him. And then they got back. This is how tolerant joint families used to be when one of them had to make their way and be the initial breadwinner. And then when he could afford it, his class moved to where all of us know it as Harganga Mahal in Khodadat Circle. So even Harganga Mahal had a lovely story. I was a little curious that this quadrant of buildings around Khodadat Circle, and 3 of them had very colonial names, and only one was Harganga. The others are Empire Mahal, Empress Mahal, Imperial Mahal, and Harganga. So I was like, why Harganga? So again, maybe I just look like I need answers. The watchman of Harganga Mahal came and said, kya chahiye? So I said, why is it Harganga? And he said, no, it was Rustam Mahal first. I said, okay, so that's more of a piece with the rest. And then he introduced me to the landlord of the building, who told me that when it changed hands in 1944, I think. Yeah, when it changed hands in the mid-40s, it went to his father and his father's brother. And the chacha's name was Harnam Singh, and the father was Ganga Singh, and therefore Harganga Mahal. So again, no one told me the story, but the watchman led me to the right person. The right person was willing to talk. So again, it's chance encounters, but I have to keep walking that street or that junction every other day in those 10 days that I get to research, because it's a fortnightly column.
Yeah, absolutely. I think persistence really is the key to to getting to the bottom of these
Yeah,
as well.
but I wish I had more time. But no, it doesn't work as a monthly column. It works fortnightly because everything is tight.
Yeah.
Even if sometimes it reads as a potted history, it's a start.
Yeah.
You know, it gives people time to explore things on their own. So
True. Uh, we've spoken about buildings, we've spoken about the people behind those buildings as well. Are there opportunities where one helps the other as well, as well in terms of conservations or institutions that can actually preserve areas or
So
localities?
citizens initiatives,
Yeah.
citizens initiatives are actually what keep this city going. So in Bandra, there are the ALMs, the Advanced Locality Management groups that really are vigilant about what happens and are even now questioning builders. And I mean, yes, redevelopment is inevitable and Bandra is completely transformed by it. But to arrest any further random development, again, the ALMs have got involved. They're using the civic channels to question. I don't know how far they'll go, but these are attempts. But CAR is doing a very good job. Do we have the CAR slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's there's the CAR Residents Association, like a lot of residents associations all over the city. But Khar Se Pyar, you can see the little creative they've made, is an offshoot of the Khar Residents Association. And these two ladies, Bindu Tandon and Anandini Thakur, we lost Anandini Thakur last year. They are at the forefront of the Khar Se Pyar initiative, which simply says, and it's like the best idea, so simple, it just requests people look after the stretch from between your gates, your two building gates, your in and out gate. Just each building care for that. You know, you don't have to do great and work with the authorities. So they work with their local MLAs, with the assistant municipal commissioner. But Khar has done a very good job of yes, there's redevelopment. That's inevitable. There's no point, you know, thinking why it's happening. But even within that kind of framework, how they're keeping everything fairly under control. The waste management is good. The kind of lots of very good civic initiatives under Khar Se Pyar, and they operate out of a library, which is a very historic library, which one day I'll tell that story also. The Nimkar Library in Khar, that is the Khar Se Pyar. And then, of course, closer to where I am at the moment, there's the Unlock the Exit movement for the Breach Candy Residents Association, because Breach Candy's got terribly congested. And in the initial plan, in the initial development plan, Maipinsi Road was supposed to have an exit as well. And in the latest DPR, that's the detailed project report plan, it's not there. So a whole lot of citizens have taken to social media, stormed social media. I don't know what will come of it, but again, citizens' initiatives. So whether it's the suburbs, Bandra, Khar, whether it's this side of town, there are citizens' initiatives, and if they're driven by people who know how to interact with the municipal, there's no point just railing against everything. It doesn't get the work done. But they're doing a remarkable job. So it's worth finding out what kind of model they follow. So yeah, citizens' initiatives help so much. And what a simple idea. Just look after their own stretch of pavement outside your building. I mean, it couldn't get any simpler to do. And so they're trying to get people to do that.
Thanks. In the last few years, Meher, we've also seen you jump onto the bandwagon of social media as well.
2 months.
Sorry. Where you now come across so much information on social media, and unfortunately, sometimes we consider the written word as the gospel truth. And I'm very happy that you have taken some space over there as well. So, how's that experience been for you?
I did that to tell the smaller stories because there are so many amazingly interesting small stories which don't fall within my long form feature format, and yet they need to be told. Origins of road names, or sometimes a little personal thing. I never post personal unless it is tied up with Bombay history. I also follow people on Bombay. Otherwise, you can live your life on Insta, and it stops you from a lot of original thinking, creativity, researching on your own. So I'm very clear who I follow. But even output, I feel it tells the small. So I'm revisiting all my old interviewees and actually getting it from them. You know what cold print can do in a city that is changing its contours so rapidly, so dramatically. And so, yeah, it's really sad. So I feel that just cold print and still photos don't do justice, which is why I have stopped writing for the papers. And I find audiovisuals are actually, if I create an archive of small stories with the Insta stories and the large stories, the ones I tell every fortnight, every alternate Sunday on my blog, then I'm creating an independent archive where we are actually recording, photographing, and interviewing people who we are going to lose so quickly, places that are just going under the hammer so quickly. So I felt the need to do that. And I also enjoy interacting with young people on social media, which didn't happen in the papers. I had anonymous readers, right?
Yeah.
Apart from friends and family and an extended set of people, there are young conservation architects doing amazing things. I'm only discovering them and engaging with them because of Insta. So I find, and they are the future of the city, the face of the city. So there's no point only interviewing senior citizens. Can't just keep riding on that wave of nostalgia. What happens now? What happens next? So I'm finding that also possible on social media, on Insta.
All right. We'll also run through a few of your other stories as well, that if you'd like to talk about a
Yeah,
little
sure.
bit. If we, of course, have the audience permission as well, because I'm sure you'd like to know more about some of these stories.
Okay, this is so a lot of people send me amazing photographs out of nowhere, just something that has happened to them and they are excited about it. So, this is at the Bullabhai Desai Institute when it used to be at Warden Road. And it was a precursor to the National Center for the Performing Arts. It was a very, very rich and vibrant cultural hub. And they had different kinds of, you had painters there, you had dancers there, you had sculptors there, you had yoga classes there. So here are Yehudi, the amazing violinist, musician, Yehudi and Diana Menuhin. You can see them sitting with garlands at Hasman. Hasman was the bungalow, it's still called Hasman, on Bullabhai Desai Road, on Warden Road, which housed the Bullabhai Desai Institute. And so this is in Hasman during Iyengar's yoga class. So Iyengar is standing behind Yehudi Menuhin and Sunu Tarapurwala, not to be confused with Suni Tarapurwala, the photographer, filmmaker. Yeah. So Sunu Tarapurwala and her brother Irach are sitting on the floor at extreme right. They are young students of Iyengar's classes. And she was excited that someone had taken this picture, the photograph of the Menuhins being treated to a yoga demonstration in as early as the early 1950s when he visited Bombay. So she said, would you like to see this photograph? And I said, yes, of course. So I have collected a lot of photographs shared by readers because they just think it's interesting for me to find out a little more when I have a little time about the photos that they have kept in their albums. So this is a very lovely one, music and yoga, and brings in the whole vitality and the important role that the Bullabhai Desai Institute played in the 1950s. This we all know, it's still Zaveri Brothers in Metro Building. But when I was researching Cinema Lane, that's the lane this side of, because it has beautiful buildings, old buildings there. So this is, yeah, this was in the 1960s. So Javeri Brothers was the first shop. So he was a runaway, this the grandfather of this family, who came to the city like so many did from wanting to make a living. And when they did set up the shop, they managed to prosper in a little while. So much so that they actually were the first to import Mont Blanc to the city. And to this day, if you go in, the door handles are shaped like Mont Blanc pens with the nibs pointing upwards north. So that's, I can't show you the detail of that, but they shared a lovely photograph of this. I think this is even found online.
Yeah, it's quite popular.
Ah. So here's a Silver Ghost Rolls Royce being pulled by 3 ox carts when it came in 1921 to Quality House. This is where Gustoso is now, I think, right? Where the, yeah. So it used to be Chinese room for many years before. So it used to be one of the 2 Rolls Royce showrooms. The other one was next to Phillips Antiques. And this was one. But amazing to think that 3 ox carts are pulling this Silver Ghost chassis in a shipping crate when it arrives here in 1921. Yeah, so this again, this came to me 5 or 6 years ago. No, when I did the book, 6 or 7 years ago, and of course at that time AI and tampering was not going on, but one still checks. So I actually wrote to Rolls-Royce and asked if this was in fact true, and they said yes, and so I carried it in the book.
So, just to point out, this was a photograph that was shared to us by Mrinal Kapadia.
Oh yes, sorry.
And unfortunately, this was gifted by him to the family, I think, that was running this shop or a part of this building. And they posted it online, and then everybody started posting on WhatsApp, and it came back to him in a much more pixelated form, of course. And he was not too happy
That
about
happens
it.
with my stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
People send me back my stories after some years and says it sounds exactly like something you would write, but I have written it. And it's circulating without my byline, and it's not funny all the time.
Yeah.
So that's not right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other side of social media.
Yeah.
We see as well.
No, and they do it very cleverly. They will put some terrible Wikipedia lines in it. And so I can't even claim that it's mine, which is terrible. Like run some really putrid line, which is not even authentic. And then I'm afraid to say it was mine,
Yeah.
because how are you going to point out the difference?
Yeah, there are tons of Facebook groups out there which run almost as if it's a business. And,
Yeah.
there's a head, there's a committee, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. And they have, these strict
Yeah.
rules, guidelines, but they'll post whatever comes along their way as well.
But it's not, they'll have all these fantastically iconic figures all in one frame and say, never before, all of these in one frame. They were not. So it's really, yeah, this is quite charming. So PAC, as a lot of people know, it stands for Parsi Amelioration Committee. Confectioners, yeah, they're now in Tardeo, but where they were earlier at Goalia Tank. See, you can see there's just a 5-digit number. It's 5 digits, right? Yeah, 5-digit phone number.
Yeah.
And can you enlarge it just to read
I may not be able to zoom it.
Okay, so that's it. So in Gujarati are all the goodies that they still produce, most of them, things like bhakras and patrel and khibana patties and mawani boi, and I'm sorry, I'm saying it the way it is, like there's no translation for all of this. But the sweets and savories that they sold all those years ago still carry on. It was started as a benevolent institution for underprivileged women would make this, and I think it still functions to a large extent that way. The proceeds go to them. And this is sorry, no, that's okay. You don't have to go back. This was their special menu, I think, in the week of Jamshedi Nowroz, that's March 21st, where they had some extra items. So that was an ad, and I thought it was. Yeah, then how world history affects shop names as well. So in Bombay, this is opposite Grant Road Station, Reza Shah Company. It was started by, it's a general store, started by Hormat Shah Andaru Jina. Came from Udwada here. And it was named Reza Shah and Company for the year that the Shah of Iran ascended the throne. So because it was Shah of Iran, and he felt some kind of kinship probably, he decided his storefront should be splashed with this name. Yeah, now to go to Borivali. And so this is a picture on the left by Apurva Gupte, my photographer colleague, when I was at Time Out magazine. And I asked him, it's a stunning picture, and I said, what drew you to this moment where a Buddhist monk is looking up very awestruck at the feet of the Buddha sculpted in the Kaneri caves? And he said, yeah, exactly that. You've said that. I thought it was a very humbling moment. He's looking up, and yet he's a monk. He's completely steeped in what he follows, the Buddhist faith. And at the feet of the Buddha, he seems so dwarfed. The humility of the moment he decided to capture. I thought that was very beautiful. And I then spoke to, so there is this gentleman called Vasant Vani on the extreme right. He was appointed the conservation officer by the ASI, by the Archaeological Survey of India, in the 70s to look after these caves. And those are his children who went regularly. So I had an interview with his son, Vijay Vani, who's there with his sisters in the middle photograph. And he spoke of the time that his father didn't really need to correct people. There were not so many people vandalizing the caves. There was very little graffiti. And this is not so long ago. This is the 70s. And he said, today there won't even be someone on site. The ASI cannot even afford to have someone like that because, people are just so brazen about, vandalizing and desecrating sites like this. So he had given me a very lovely interview, Vijay Vani, who is the little boy standing with his even younger baby sisters there.
Okay, so we'll come to the next photograph in a bit. But first, since we're talking about photographs, all of us, I'm sure, at some point in time have been subjected to photographs which we think are real, and we happily forward them to 20, 30 other people out there, only to later realize that, oh God, it wasn't, it was AI, artificial intelligence, right? Very recently, I'm sure you'd have received these photographs of cycling licenses in Bombay or walking licenses in Bombay. And without even realizing it, many of us have just shared it ahead saying, oh, this is such a fascinating thing. It would come to me. And my father sent it to me, who's sitting in Delhi saying, look, something in Bombay is happening. I mean, used to happen. I said, please, it is AI. Please, I hope you have not forwarded it to anybody else. But what's your take on this?
On AI?
On AI and its role, whether it's interference or whether it is supporting us?
So if used well, of course, it can be harnessed in so many positive ways. But I think the danger with AI doing recreations of historic events is they over dramatize, and it's so speculative. There's so much action and sound and the heightened color that takes away from, even if they're presenting the facts right, that obfuscates the facts.
Yeah.
It deflects from what is actually reality. So if it could be used in a more subdued way, it would work better, right? So that's my take on it. But having said that, I have only a limited view on this because mine is such a niche area of journalism, oral history, that all my images come from family archives, institutional archives. So I'm never tempted to go the way of recreating. Either you have it or you don't have it. That's how I like to.
So we see you resisting AI for now, at least.
For now, never say never.
Yeah. Till we can't deny it, maybe, but
Yeah.
Okay. That brings me to one of our last questions, Meher, and we'll probably then open the floor to the larger audience as well. Is if you were to talk about one incredible story that you had come across and then, of course, was shared to the larger audience as well, which one would that be?
There are two actually.
Okay.
Can we have?
Yeah.
Yeah. And both were in Dongri. So Dongri was actually for me a very intimidating story to do because it's a whole universe. It stretches across so many areas. So I decided to call it 3 Cups of Tea at Charnal, and I focused my stories around Charnal and 3 stories. And this was the first. The second one is actually my absolute favorite. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
So the water carriers in Bombay are a lost breed now. There are only 5 families left. There were 6 when I went looking for them. There's only 5 families. Water carriers they're called Bhishtis. They came 2 centuries ago when stone buildings were being built, and they still supply. That's the only living they know. That's the only job they know. So some families don't do anything. But you can see the goat skin bag that Kanu Sheikh is on the right. Those are their brothers, Sagir and Kanu Sheikh, in front of Shafi Masjid. I found them at Charnal. And they're very easy to find if you see them with the goatskin mashak. Otherwise, there are only 5 family left between Paiduni and Dongri. So it was just again very happy chance that I saw them. And as soon as they realized that I was interested, it was beautiful how they came up to me and said, I remember the year, they said साल 1819 में, so that's 1819, हमारे बाप दादा पहले आए थे हरियाणा से,
Okay.
because stone buildings were beginning to be built in Bombay, and they needed to have the water layered from time to time, splashed on them. And how remarkable, without knowing that I was looking for facts, they are giving me this date. That's a fine sense of where you come from.
Right.
So I was very taken up by them. And if you see, they all have a little bit of a loping gait and a shoulder that is, they all develop a shoulder problem because that's the Yeah, the occupational hazard. And they still sell some liters of water now and then to some shops that patronize them, but otherwise they're not going to be around very long, much longer.
It's very interesting because we at Khaki do a walk in this area. In fact, we do 4 walks in Dongri itself, and one of them is called Charnal as well. While we're not able to see as many water carriers as well, but you see a lot of symbolism of the mashak that they're carrying over there, because the area is largely dominated by Shia Muslims. And for them, the mashak is a very important symbol because during the Battle of Karbala, there's an entire story of how Imam Hussein and his followers are, made to suffer without water.
Oh, I see.
So one of the individuals over there, whose name is Hazrat Abbas, tries to bring water to Imam Hussein using a mashak.
Okay.
And in this process, the arrow of General Yazid, who attacks them, hits that mashak and the water flows out and they're not able to get any water. So the entire area is surrounded by symbolism of the mashak, whether it's a fountain, whether it's a gate, whether it's trinkets being sold in shops
Wow.
as well.
Okay, I haven't seen
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I'd
it's
love
it's
to do that.
fascinating.
I'll
So
come. And also they told me, they said, how well do you know your Mughal history? So I was like, how fantastic that they're asking me Mughal history. So I said, I hope I remember why. So he said, because a bhishti, a water carrier, gave Humayun water when he was almost dying on the battlefield. I said, okay, thank you for that.
and of course, the very famous poem
Kipling's.
by Kipling, Ganga Deen, is also based on a Bishti
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. Okay, let's move to the
My
next one.
favorite.
Yeah.
My favorite. Okay, so some of you may have read this. Sorry if you got to hear this again. So I went to Dongri with somebody called Musa Chhatriwala. He was actually a Chhatriwala. He's an umbrella seller. And he said, because you need a local for the little ins and outs of the gullies.
Of course.
And he brought me to the surma wala. He said, I don't think you'll have much of a story there. He just sells surma. But something about him made me go in. And Muhammad Anis Bhai, we lost him in COVID. So you can see Muhammad Anis Bhai here in a shop set up by his father. And his father, so the shop is called Dada Nanji Kamarsi Surma Wala. Set up in 1930. It's still there, but I think it was just closed down. I was hoping that they would just go 4 more years and hit a century. That would be so special, but I think it's closing down. And he called me in and he said, you want to hear my father's story? I said, always. So his father was a poet from Navsari and came here and knew some really great families. He knew the Mumbai Samachar family. He was friends with the Mercantile Bank family. But for some reason, he started the Surma shop. And it's a Surma and Attar shop. And so Muhammad Anis carries on the tradition, but also because of his father being a poet, he has literary ambitions himself. And he took me to the room at the back. So the front is just little benches where people come, students come. This is a student saying, Dada, I'm having my exams going on and all these studies. I need something cooling for my eyes. So he's busy lining his eyes with surma. And in the room at the back, there's art history books. So Muhammad Anis Bhai said to me, come, what would you like to read? And I saw my Marg books. I used to work as text editor. I saw Marg publications and I saw other foreign publications like Thames and Hudson. And he said, I started only by reading the captions, but now I'm interested in reading more. And whenever you want to borrow something, please come. It's a tiny, tiny shop. Who would have known that this would be at the back? Then he taught me, I think taught is the right word, because he really made me realize. He said, you're from Navsari. I told him that, oh, your father came from Navsari. My father's from Navsari too, my father's family. So he said, really? And when was the last time you visited Navsari? I had to very feebly say, after my Navjo. So that's like 50 years ago. So he was appalled. He said, how can you? We all come from somewhere. Don't you want to visit where you came from? And before I knew it, he was calling someone and booking my ticket on a train. I still remember it was the month of February, and I'm booking a ticket on a train with him to Navsari. He said, I'm going next month. And I'm booking a ticket. So I had to as best I could tell him, no, I understand what you say, and I promise I will do it soon. He said, no, you won't. Unless I book the ticket, you will not do it. And he made a distinction which was very, very moving for me. He said, a city is just where you earn your roti rozi, but you come from your native place, as all of us say. And that is very important because you get sukoon from your native place, and this is just where the commerce of your life is lived. So you must go back to it. And that whole act of actually trying to book my ticket with him was, I thought that was really, and why he believed that everyone should have roots. Your roots are not just the city. However long you've lived in it, where did your ancestors come from? Honor that place is what he was trying to tell me. So, yeah, and okay, he took himself very seriously. See, he's got alphabet charts to test his customers' eyes at the that's Chirodip Chowdhury's photograph. And this I loved very much. This is a Hollywood still that he has on the wall. He's blown it up on his wall, and I'm going to read because I want the exact. So it's a still from the 1964 Hollywood psychological thriller 36 Hours. It's prominently hung in the Surma shop. It's a scene where these highly popular stars of the time, Rod Taylor as the doctor examines the eyes of the patient. Patient is James Garner, and Eva Marie Saint is acting as the nurse. So I told him, where did you get that from? He said, everything that is important to my profession, I will keep. So look at the range of cultural references he has. I was quite taken up by the poster there. And he said, take a photograph, put it in your book, put it in your article. So I did. So yes, Mohammed Bhai Anis was a very, very favorite interviewee of mine.
So, Meher, as we come closer to our discussion, ending, you spoke about the fact that everyone needs to go back to their roots, understand them, visit them more often. But also, I think the lesson for all of us here is that everyone is a storyteller as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think many of us don't realize the potential we have, our neighborhood has, in being able to get those stories out, not just for columns written by you, but for the larger audience as well. So,
And for oneself.
yeah, and for oneself.
So I think all of us now who have had elderly parents who we still have with us, those of us who are privileged to still have them with us or have lost them recently, will remember growing up with the same stories being repeated by our grandparents, the same stories. And I even remember saying to them, I've heard this before, now stop repeating it. We're so dismissive of them. And then as we get closer to their time of life, we wish we remembered. We wish we hadn't brushed them aside because it's so important. A sense of who you are came from, who came before you. And if you don't have that, you're quite rudderless, right? And why must we only wish for that after they're gone? So I keep telling a lot of younger people who, ask me why I do this. I said, it's so simple. Just take your phone and record. If you think it's the same story you're hearing, never mind. It's there. Keep it, just keep it. It will be a source of solace for you, a source of knowledge for you, and a sense of where you came from, which is so important for all of us in our dealings with each other. And understanding each other comes from the stories we have heard, the stories we share. So I think storytelling is very, very powerful as a means to understand each other. They're not just stories. Okay. And there's been a social experiment that was conducted during COVID when everyone was leading such alienated lives. And that was the time when a lot of people were saying, gather at the feet of your elders and you're anyway in that confined space together and get the stories. And then I read this, and I'd like to share this with you as the last thing. Sure. It's called the transition principle. So social scientists say that it's like a corporate handover. Stories from the past connect family members by stirring up a common pot of memories, explaining how that family sees itself in relation to the world. Oral history sharing shapes a family into a single entity that has changed over time. Children of such experiences, of shared stories that are handed down, feel a very secure part of being part of a large, stable, evolving whole. And it was experienced very sharply during COVID. So actually, COVID is a very important period because at some point, oral historians further down the line are going to talk about COVID and the stories that came out of COVID. So again, every dark period has its stories and actually gives a sense of who people were and what they went through at the time. So
So on that note, Meher, thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your insights with
Thank
us
you
as
for
well,
listening.
and a lot of the stories that came from here as well. We'll come to that last bit in a second. We're going to open the floor if there are any questions that you would like to ask Meher as well. If not, I have a few questions myself. So.
ominous.
But yeah, floor's open to anyone who has any questions.
Yeah.
Um, on a personal note, in the last couple of years of my mother's life, I used to talk to her on the phone, even if I couldn't go to meet her, and I would make her talk because she had started forgetting things sometimes. By asking her questions, making her relive certain parts of her life, I was able to act. I felt it was kind of activating some of the neural connections
Yeah,
for her.
sure.
Okay? In the same way, when you interview people, do you feel that you are in some way helping them?
So I would like to believe that, but I don't have so much time to analyze that. See, I have 1 week to 10 days of research time and then 3 days to write that story because it's a fortnightly thing. But when I revisit them, I find that they are giving me so much information beyond the story being published. They're saying, I forgot, and the excitement builds. So definitely the sharpness is building because even if you are at a stage where you cannot remember the immediate, we all know that the past memories are very sharp. So it needs just that little stoking. It needs a very gentle stoking and it comes tumbling out. And so often I'm left with that and thinking, oh, I wish I had this. But then that's very selfish. You're thinking of it from the story point of view. But if you look at it, it's so great. If you look at it a little more expansively, he or she has benefited tremendously. So I think what you did for your mother was very special.
I know you speak Marathi, Hindi, Gujarati, and English very fluently. Tell us like a little story about how that comes into play, how it helps, because languages are so interesting in Bombay.
Yeah, so I'll talk about Gujarati a little later. No, I'll talk about Gujarati first. Gujarati is the business language of Bombay. At least 3 communities speak it: Parsis, Hindu Gujaratis, Boris. So it helps tremendously that I come from that. That's my mother tongue because so many nuances get lost if you struggle with them, and if someone, even those with fluent English, but if you when I show that I am happy to talk to them in their mother tongue, the warmth is there, the rapport is there. It's a lovely feeling. So mother tongue, very, very important, very important.
And Marathi? Any interesting?
Yeah, except of course you had Dilip Bhai Salunke who told me, I'll challenge you. You speak to me in Marathi, I'll answer in Gujarati. So that was quite an interview. I did do that. I put that on as a short story on Insta and in the long thing. So everyone is, of course, if you speak the lingo, it really works. In fact, I use very little English. I write in it, but their thoughts are in their language. So the nuances you miss, and the nuances are the details are what make the account interesting. Otherwise, it's little bland if you think that you're going to just, stomp your way through in English. Yeah. Yeah, they.
So, during the course of all these interactions with people, different people, you're obviously learning a lot about people and their backgrounds. What interaction over this period of time have you had where you think you all learned something finally thinking about yourself? Some insight that you picked up about yourself.
That's a very interesting question. It's a deep question. Off the top of my head, I'm not able to think, but I'll tell you what it's done overall for me. I'm an impatient person. It's taught me a lot of patience overall. Okay, so no specific people have. I've learned a lot of patience. I've learned that not everything, you can talk for an hour with someone, you have to, But the lines that you use, the thought that you use are just 2.5 lines. And initially that used to bother me like mad because it's a lot of time. It's very time consuming to do interviews like this. And then I found, no, this is it. If you've chosen to do it, you do it. So it's taught me a lot of patience. It's taught me a lot of humility. It's taught me never to assume anything, never to presume anything about anyone. People we just not look at, and you think there's fixtures somewhere. They're on the street, yes, they're there. They know a lot of history and they bring a lot of compassion to their accounts, even if they live under such trying conditions, but they do have resilience in a way that you can't understand. And you go home feeling very humbled, and you learn a lot of patience, and you learn that everyone isn't bound to open up to you. So you have to give them their time, and it's taught me lots of life lessons, but I can't pinpoint what if one person has. But thank you, it's a lovely question.
Yes.
Question is related to that actually. City is never just monuments. City is made up of people. So you jotting down these stories. Having done that, has your perspective about Mumbai changed, and yes, how has it changed?
Oh yes, it has made me very proud of us. And we all need to feel proud of the city, especially when it's in such squalor, in such a mess these days. It's these stories that actually keep you going. You have faith in the way people have built their lives, how they struggle with those lives that they've built. Despite all the odds, they don't know the next day someone must be coming and raising their tenement. So you just learn to appreciate the ordinary people that are really the extraordinary part of this city. And that goes way beyond monuments. Monuments are documented everywhere, dates are there everywhere. But oral history is particularly rewarding because it gives you an insight into people's lives. And this is the best city for it because people are so open, right, Vinayak? They really are so open. I go cold calling, I don't know who I'm going to meet most of the time, but I come back feeling really good.
So on the subject of cold calling, and there was a point raised as well, there have been pitfalls, there have been rejections. How have you dealt with that?
You have to get over them. So sometimes I start with knowing only one person on a particular street. And finally, when the story is done at the end of the week, they're the weakest link. It's just that I know them first and they've put me on to people, but then out of courtesy, you have to, include them. So you have to make your own way. You just have to make your own way. So that comes with time and patience. And I think nostalgia is very double-edged. So by now I've learned how to sort out what sounds really interesting is often most inauthentic. And I don't have so much time to corroborate. So sometimes it's very tempting to use something that sounds sensational, but no, you just can't. So nostalgia, especially the elderly, right? They're riding high on it, and it's very sad sometimes to even bring them back to the subject. It's a little tough.
And going in these neighborhoods, have you ever felt, okay, I might be treading on a boundary where it might be unsafe for me to be in that discussion or
No,
that
I've
environment?
never felt unsafe. In fact, in the most crowded busties, I have felt the safest. I don't work too much late evening, and one knows, right? I mean, you do a night walk in Grand Road, you know immediately how to set the boundaries, and you can read people, and people read you after a while. I've not felt unsafe. But I wouldn't be able to do what Yuti does so well, like, a night walk and things like that. Yeah.
I mean, I actually wanted to ask something along those lines about it, the gendering of it all. Like, are a woman and you approach. I sometimes do feel that when I approach people on the street for a story to ask them, they usually sort of clamor because I am a woman and I am to them an upper class woman and kind of way that I dress and all. So they do sort of clamor. But then I also notice in other instances people are more willing to talk to a woman than they would be to a man.
Exactly. So we have to use that to our, They open up a little more. They think we have less agenda. Yes, so we have to dwell on those things.
Yeah. Any other questions from the group?
One more question. If you had
Make it easier than the first.
if you had to explore one city apart from Mumbai in this country, which one would you want?
I would choose Delhi. I would choose Delhi. Such a beautiful city. It's just like spilling with stories. Uh, but I would take someone along. I would take Jogia, my lovely daughter-in-law is from Delhi. I would take someone who has grown up there. Yes, yes. So there you too. Yes. I would take someone along. Like, see, even in Dongri, simply because of the expanse of the space of it, the scale of Dongri, I took Musa Bhai Chatriwala with me. Because suppose I'm missing a lane which is particularly heavy with history,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know, right? So in 1 week, how much can you find out which is, so I work with a time limitation, but that works well because you're on momentum. So yeah, I would love to do Delhi.
Be-
Awesome, is it?
Being from Delhi myself, I've had that bias that most of Delhi's history is seen in ruins, monuments that have been documented, ticketed, so on and so forth. And apart from what is called Shah Jahanabad or Old Delhi, where else does one go to find some of these stories as well? But that's a bias that I have, and I would love to explore Delhi the way I've been doing Mumbai as well, but I have that restriction.
Ironic, no?
Yeah. I feel much more at peace over here. So for me, the second city would probably be a Calcutta rather than a Delhi.
Acha, yeah,
Because
okay.
there's enough that you can
Yeah,
get
actually,
into.
Cal comes a very close second
Yeah.
to Delhi, yes.
Yeah. True. Any other questions from the group?
Sorry, speaking about Gujarati, I can see Jatin is in the audience. I had done a story on where were you when? So where were you when Gandhiji's assassination was announced? Where were you when the 1944 port blast happened? And his mother gave me such a beautiful account. She spoke to me in Gujarati. Now, had I not, and had I used Jatin only as a via media, it would not have come. So, it wouldn't have sounded right. She came on the phone. She did me that favor of going through the whole thing where she witnessed firsthand. You were opposite, right, at Masjid Bandar. So, and then Jatin sent me accounts. In fact, today he told me there's a further account he'd like to share with me.
Oh.
So I find this very special that this goes beyond columns. Once you have built a rapport with certain interviewees, they continue to feed you with amazing insights and it goes much beyond. So I save all that. I have all that. One day we'll pull it out and do something with it.
In fact, I'd like to steal some credit here because I introduced Jatin to you about this story.
I'm
as
so
well.
sorry. Yes. Yes, Vinayak.
No, that's all right. No, so I always have this ulterior motive to try and find a feature in Meher's articles as well. And
No, but
yeah.
it's true. Even for Club Road, you introduced me. So anytime I'm stuck with just no sources at all, and yet I'm curious and I want to start exploring an area, I call Vinayak, and that has happened for years.
Please come to Dongri again.
Yes. 4 walks in Dogri, is it?
Yeah, and many more, in fact, that can happen. So, any other questions that the group has?
I have copies of the book.
Yeah,
if you
so
want to
if
just,
if you all want to know
most
more,
of you have them, I
Yeah.
think, but
So, 2 things. One is, of course, the book. The second is access to Once Upon a City digital columns that you can scan this QR code and then it'll take you
my
to the
daughter
portal.
Aisha is going to be
Yeah.
looking after that.
So, if there are any queries, please feel free to ask. Ask them, ask Meher, and then you can treat yourself to so many stories from across the city as well.
And please record your own family histories. It's so important. Yeah, Monica.
So just on a level of this transition that you made, I don't read everything in detail, but I think the sight and the sounds which are added when you're doing the audio visual thing,
Yes.
really, for me as a personal experience, been
Thank
very
you.
interesting.
Yeah.
They make the stories alive actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my primary purpose because we're just losing all of this. And what can a flat photograph do, right? Ultimately. And also, given the quality of newsprint today, not just Midday, any paper, they have to for cost cutting. you have beautiful photographs that are just completely washed out. So that's not fair. You make families hunt in their lofts and in their albums for photos, and then this kind of
Sound
and the
also adds a lot.
absolutely,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. How that person speaks. We're not going to have them around for long.
Perfect. Sharda? Something you wanted to announce?
Oh God, everybody's turning around looking at
Yeah. This is for me. Okay, so thank you first of all to all of you for joining in, and as a small token, Meher, for you to take out your time for this.
Thank you so
I
much.
have been given the privilege of handing this over to you.
Thank you.
So please join me in.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much.
you, thank you.
Thanks.
You can just pose for the cameras there as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks everyone for coming. There's so many exciting things happening this evening, like Citizens Archive at Kemul. So I'm happy that some of you are here with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
See you at future events as well.